You've tested positive for HIV, which is the virus that causes AIDS.
Hollywood has always had its secrets, but few are as heartbreaking as the silent battles fought by actors in a time when the disease was feared, stigmatized, and little understood. Here are 10 famous actors who lost the battle to AIDS.
What do you know about caring? Have you ever seen the inside of one of those places? The laughing and the tears, and the cruel eyes studying you.
Best known for his work as the homicidal hotel owner Norman Bates in Hitchcock's classic Psycho, Anthony Perkins was one of the more decorated actors in his era. In fact, by the time he played Bates, Perkins had already been nominated for a Tony, an Academy Award, and had won a Golden Globe Award as New Star of the Year. Born in Manhattan, Perkins began acting as a teenager in summer stock programs and appeared in films before reaching Broadway. He had a poor relationship with his absent father, though. Osgood Perkins was an actor and was busy with many roles, including a supporting part in the original Scarface the year Perkins was born. It was so bad that Perkins' only fond memory of Osgood was a brief 1937 vacation to Fire Island. In 1953, Perkins made his film The Actress, co-starring Spencer Tracy and Gene Simmons. It was a major disappointment, save aside its Academy Award for Best Costume Design. This led Perkins to return to theater. His debut on Broadway came in 1953's Tea and Sympathy, which was met with praise and critical acclaim. Motivated, he returned to Hollywood 3 years later and featured on Friendly Persuasion with Gary Cooper and Dorothy McGuire. He won a Golden Globe for Best New Actor and an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. This sparked a 7-year contract with Paramount Pictures, where he became their final matinee idol. Friends and co-workers knew Perkins as a shy, nervous young guy with a magnetic personality. Bruce J. Friedman, Perkins' subsequent colleague on the project Steam Bath, said he was incredibly charming, but also very controlled. Yet Paramount was eager to heterosexualize Perkins' image, resulting in a succession of love parts with Audrey Hepburn, Sophia Loren, and Shirley MacLaine, all of which did little to change his sexuality. According to Charles Weinkauf's posthumous biography Split Image, Perkins only had same-sex relationships until his late 30s with artist Christopher Makos, dancer-choreographer Grover Dale, and most notably, Tab Hunter, whom Perkins met in 1956 at the Chateau Marmont while filming Friendly Persuasion. The relationship faced considerable disapproval from Paramount Pictures, leading to escalating tensions and executives openly confronting Perkins about his romantic involvement. In the 1970s, Perkins decided to undergo conversion therapy. He married Barry Berenson 3 years later. From 1983 to 1990, he repeated his role as Norman Bates in Psycho 2, Psycho 3, and Psycho 4: The Beginning. The third installment in the anthology earned him a Best Actor Saturn Award nomination. His final project was in The Deep Woods, a television program that aired a month after his death in September 1992. He was 60 at the time. While his death came as a shock to the film community, the AIDS-related causes were the most surprising. Perkins hid the fact that he had AIDS, going in and out of hospitals under assumed names. Throughout this period, his wife and children were regularly tested for the disease, and all results consistently came back negative. It wasn't until a few weeks before his passing that he publicly acknowledged his illness, despite having continued working on films during that time. He died with his wife, Barry Berenson, and his 2 sons by his side. To date, Perkins is considered a cultural icon and an influential figure in film because of his long career, especially as Norman Bates in Psycho. Numerous references, parodies, and documentaries have been created about the thriller and character, leading many to pronounce the motion picture as the greatest horror film of all time. The American Film Institute named Bates as the second greatest villain in film history, surpassed only by Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of the Lambs. Do you agree with them? Number 9. Robert Reed. Similarly to Perkins, Robert Reed shocked the nation when he suddenly passed away in 1992 from AIDS-related colon cancer at the age of 59. He lived his entire life in the closet, and only those closest to him knew he was gay. It was in no way an honorable end for a Shakespearean actor who earned multiple accolades throughout his career, most notably in miniseries like Rich Man, Poor Man and Roots, where he earned Emmy nominations. Born Robert Wright Jr. in Highland Park, Chicago, Reed spent his childhood in Texas before moving to Oklahoma. He showed an early flair for acting and music, performing in high school plays. His rich baritone also got him early work as a radio announcer at local radio stations, where he wrote and produced radio dramas. In 1950, he began his undergraduate studies at Northwestern University, one of the nation's top drama schools, and quickly landed leading roles. In fact, he performed in over 8 plays in college, all of which were leading roles. After studying for a term at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London, Reed returned to the U.S. and performed in summer stock in Eagles Mere, Pennsylvania. He joined the off-Broadway group The Shakespeare Right, where he played Romeo in Romeo and Juliet and had a lead role in A Midsummer Night's Dream. Later, he became part of the Studebaker Theater Company in Chicago. By the late 50s, he had relocated to L.A. and, on the advice of industry professionals, changed his name to Robert Reed. All that attention was not lost on the women around him, and Reed dated several. He married fellow student Marilyn Rosenberger in 1954, and they had a daughter named Karen before divorcing in 1959. By the early 60s, though, Reed's character was at an all-time high, a fact that only fueled his desire to remain closeted. Yes, Reed kept his sexuality a closely guarded secret, as being openly gay during that time could have jeopardized his career, a career that was flourishing like never before. He starred for 4 seasons as E.G. Marshall's attorney's son in the Defenders series, and received critical acclaim when he took over Robert Redford's role in the Broadway production of Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park. I mean, sure, he was a diva, but he was a pretty good one. As a Shakespearean actor, he had rows with executives and writers who didn't share his reality vision. He preferred his performances to be rooted in reality and wasn't particularly fond of overly light or superficial content. But while many saw his antics as diva behavior, it's safe to say they're probably the reason why many of his shows remain watchable today. And yes, he was a lovable guy. At the peak of the Brady Bunch show's popularity, he treated his co-stars to trips to New York and London at his own cost and gifted each of them movie cameras to document their experiences. And guess what? Despite his strong dislike for the show's frequently absurd scripts, he agreed to every reunion special or series because he understood that his absence would financially impact the other actors. When Reed came to terms with his impending death, he reached out to his Brady Bunch co-star, Florence Henderson, asking her to inform the cast. She agreed, later describing the task of making those calls as the hardest thing I ever had to do. Reed died on May 12, 1992 at Huntington Memorial Hospital in Pasadena, California. He was 59 years old at the time. At first, Reed's death was only attributed to cancer. However, information on his death certificate later disclosed that he was also HIV positive. Although Reed did not have AIDS at the time of his passing, his doctor noted his HIV status as one of the significant conditions that contributed to death on the certificate. He is buried at Memorial Park Cemetery in Skokie, Illinois. Looking back, it's a shame that Reed lived an unhappy life. In a 2000 interview with ABC News, Henderson described Reed as the ideal father and husband on screen, yet he struggled with sadness off camera. He was angry, sad, and frustrated with being in the closet all his life. She believed that if Reed hadn't been so compelled to do so, much of his anger and frustration would have been non-existent. Though she never confronted him about it, she felt a deep compassion for his suffering and the weight he carried until his death. But while Reed had to live a double life to save his career and image, this actor did the opposite. In fact, his queer relationship made the history books.
Pablo Zamora or Peter, whatever you feel most comfortable with. I'm 21, and I found out that I was HIV positive when I was 17.
Number 8. Pablo Zamora. Oh yes, Pedro Pablo Zamora, the Cuban-American AIDS educator and television personality. As one of the first openly gay men with AIDS to be depicted in mainstream media, Zamora almost single-handedly drew global awareness to HIV/AIDS, as well as LGBTQ issues and discrimination. His romantic relationship with Sean Sasser, was also documented on MTV's reality series The Real World San Francisco, and their relationship was later nominated by viewers for the Favorite Love Story Award. The airing of their commitment ceremony, where they exchanged vows in 1994, was the first same-sex ceremony broadcast on television and is regarded as a significant milestone in the history of the medium. His works caught the eye of President Bill Clinton, who praised Zamora for personalizing and humanizing the experiences of people living with HIV, particularly in Latino communities, with his activism, including his testimony before Congress. But while you'd think Zamora's life was indeed a bed of roses, the truth was starkly different. Zamora was raised in a poor household, and his mother died of skin cancer when he was only 13. His elder sister, Millie, raised him, and he focused on schoolwork as a means of coping with his rising grief. He even dreamed of being a doctor to save other cancer patients like his mother. To be fair, Zamora was an exceptional student. He was the president of the science club and was named most intellectual and best all-around by his Hialeah High School classmates. Plus, he captained the cross-country team. As a teenager, Zamora began to develop romantic feelings, and it was around this time that his father discovered that he was gay. However, instead of being dismissive, his father accepted his homosexuality and was only worried about homophobia and its potential dangers. In the 1980s, AIDS awareness was only catching up in America, and Zamora had little education regarding safe sex and AIDS prevention. Such lessons weren't mentioned in his school, and even if they were, the victims were tagged deviants, drug addicts, and prostitutes. In late 1989, 17-year-old Zamora donated blood during a Red Cross drive and later learned that his blood tested reactive. After being tested for HIV, he received a positive diagnosis on November 9th. Although his family was devastated by the news, they remained supportive. Zamora set a goal to graduate from high school before he passed away, which he accomplished in 1990. 5 months later, tragedy struck yet again as Zamora suffered a severe case of shingles. After his recovery, Zamora joined Body Positive, an HIV/AIDS resource center in Miami, where he connected with others living with the disease and learned how to lead a fulfilling life. He began raising awareness about HIV in his community and eventually became a full-time AIDS educator. Over 5 years, he spoke at schools, PTA meetings, and churches across the country, attended an international AIDS conference, and served on the board of a charitable trust funded by insurance companies despite being denied insurance himself. Midway through filming MTV's The Real World, Zamora's health suddenly declined. He experienced night sweats, pneumonia, extreme fatigue, and significant weight loss. Producer John Murray noticed that Zamora became ill more rapidly than anticipated, which prompted him to request that they share his story until the very end. Before his hospitalization, Zamora told his family not to keep him alive by artificial means, to spare his family the pain he witnessed during his mother's prolonged death. After developing a high fever and becoming unresponsive, his family honored his wishes by withdrawing life support. Surrounded by his family and longtime friends, Zamora passed away on November 11, 1994, just hours after the final episode of The Real World San Francisco aired. He was buried on November 13th at the age of 22. Number 7. Lance Loud. Born Alanson Russell Loud on June 26, 1951, in La Jolla, California, Lance was a groundbreaking figure in American pop culture who knew how to enjoy the spices of life. He's best known for his 1973 appearance in An American Family, a pioneering reality television series that featured his coming-out story, just like Pablo Zamora. But hey, before he became an icon in the gay community, Lance was the eldest of 5 children to be a U.S. Navy man. After several moves, his family settled in Santa Barbara, California, where Lance was drawn to the city's vibrant art and music scene of the 1960s. Little did he know he'd be a star on television. In 1973, Lance became part of one of the world's first reality shows when PBS aired An American Family, a reality show that provided an unfiltered view of American family dynamics. The most remarkable part of the show was Lance's open acknowledgement of his homosexuality, something that was groundbreaking at a time when LGBTQ+ representation on TV was scarce. Yet he came out on the second episode with an estimated 10 million viewers and changed the television landscape forever. Amid controversy and media attention surrounding his sexual orientation, Loud received support from the gay community, which encouraged him to embrace his role in the gay liberation movement. After An American Family, Loud pursued his passion for music by forming a band called The Mumps with his longtime friend Christian Hoffman. Although the Mumps gained a loyal following, especially in the punk scenes, they struggled to secure a major record label deal, and the band eventually disbanded. Nevertheless, Loud's influence in music circles endured, and later compilations of the Mumps' music, such as Fatal Charm and How I Saved the World, helped cement the band's place in punk history. Beyond music, Loud continued to build a career as a writer, contributing columns to publications like Rock Scene, The Advocate, and Details. His articles frequently reflected his unapologetic personality and sharp wit, often reporting on the artist and countercultures he admired. Using his platform and fame, Loud maintained a strong voice within the LGBTQ+ community and advocated for gay rights and visibility, until tragedy struck. By the 1990s, Loud was battling both HIV and hepatitis C, which ultimately led to liver failure. His health declined rapidly and forced him to be in hospice care until he passed away on December 22, 2001, at the age of 50. Before that, he wrote a final article titled Musings on Mortality, a reflection on his life. Following his death, the documentary Lance Loud, A Death in an American Family was released, chronicling his final months and serving as a poignant reflection on his impact as an openly gay public figure at a time when such visibility was rare. HBO also commemorated him through the 2011 film Cinema Verite, a dramatized retelling of An American Family, starring Diane Lane, Tim Robbins, James Gandolfini, and Thomas Dekker as Lance. A year later, Loud's bereaved mother authorized a memoir about his life titled Lance Out Loud. The book was edited by Christopher Makos and published by Glitterati Incorporated. Number 6. Brad Davis. As one of the few openly bisexual men during his heyday, Brad Davis became a gay film icon for the number of gay-themed plays and films he featured in, despite the warnings that it could damage his career. Born in Tallahassee, Florida, to an alcoholic dentist, Davis's life was anything but easy. He suffered physical abuse from his father and was, overly touched by his own mother. He and his brother Gene, who also became an actor, went through so many challenges just to get into the industry. He graduated from Titusville High School and went on to study acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and the American Place Theater. After appearing on the soap opera How to Survive a Marriage, he continued his career with roles in off-Broadway productions. Getting into Hollywood, Davis changed his name from Bobby to Brad to avoid confusion with another actor named Bobby Davis, and thankfully so, because he was super successful. In 1976, he was cast in the miniseries Roots, and as Sally Field's love interest in the TV film Sybil. That same year, he married casting director Susan Bluestein, and they later had one child. That said, Davis's biggest role came as the lead Billy Hayes in 1978's Midnight Express. He earned a Golden Globe Award for New Star of the Year, Actor, and Best Motion Picture Acting Debut. He also received Best Actor nominations at the Golden Globes and BAFTA Awards, though Richard Dreyfuss won that year for The Goodbye Girl. In 1981, Davis played Jackson Scholes in the Oscar-winning Chariots of Fire, before taking a career risk by starring in Querelle, a gay-themed film directed by Rainer Werner Fassbinder. Despite industry warnings, Davis chose to take the role, but the film was a commercial failure and received poor critical reviews. In any case, did you notice any strange pattern in his career? No? Take a look at the trajectory once again. He was an overnight sensation who rose to the top of the industry as soon as he came in through the doors. He was even cast as John Rambo in First Blood before the film got canceled after Orion Pictures bought Filmways. Yet his career was DOA. He was thrust into a life of fame and riches and crashed into alcohol and drug addiction. Struggling with unemployment, exhaustion, and the risk of losing his wife, Brad Davis chose to get sober. He joined Alcoholics Anonymous in 1981 to begin his recovery and with the birth of his daughter Alexandra in 1983, the future looks bright. It's a shame the spark never lasted, though. On the 5th of December 1985, a letter arrived from Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Brad was HIV positive, and he had no idea how. Despite the night sweats, weight loss, and the growing realization that nothing could save him, Mr. Davis and his wife kept his condition a secret. In the movie industry, the word AIDS often meant the end of a career, and he needed every dollar to support his family. Rock Hudson passed away from AIDS the same year Davis learned that he was HIV positive, and he saw firsthand how the media tarnished Hudson's reputation. This type of career-damaging frenzy was something Brad Davis couldn't afford. Until his death at 41 on September 8, 1991, only Davis and his wife of 15 years, Susan Bluestein Davis, knew about his condition. Before his death, Davis asked his wife to finish the book he wouldn't live to complete, and she honored the promise. She later revealed that her husband likely contracted HIV through intravenous drug use. He became the first heterosexual actor to die from AIDS, and the news made headlines across America, an outcome Davis predicted. Hey, before we go into the next actor on our list, can you guess who it is? It should be a breeze if you've been following along, as we've kind of already spilled the beans. Number 5. Rock Hudson. Born from humble beginnings to a mixed heritage of German, Swiss, English, and Irish ancestry, who would have thought Roy Harold Scherer Jr. would become one of the most recognizable faces in the industry? He was raised in a devout Roman Catholic household and was plunged into a steep crisis. The Great Depression struck his family hard, and when his father lost his job, he abandoned them. By the age of 4, Hudson's parents had divorced, and his mother remarried Wallace Fitzgerald, a former Marine Corps officer. Hudson deeply resented his stepfather, who adopted him without his consent, and changed his name to Roy Harold Fitzgerald. Fortunately for our young Roy, the fairy tale marriage ended in a quick divorce with no children. During his teenage years, Hudson worked as an usher in a movie theater, and it was there he discovered a flair for acting. He dreamt of becoming a Hollywood star, but he faced a major hurdle, a stark inability to remember lines. It would plague him for as long as he lived. After graduating from high school in 1943, Hudson enlisted in the United States Navy during World War II and served as an aircraft mechanic in the Philippines. He returned home in 1946 and reconnected with his biological father in Los Angeles before heading full steam to Hollywood. Although he applied to the University of Southern California's drama program, he was rejected due to poor grades and turned to odd jobs for support. Life was coming hard and fast. His dream of becoming an actor was fading, and he was struggling to make ends meet. But hey, what's a coming-of-age story without a low point? In 1947, he sent his photograph to talent scout Henry Wilson, who agreed to manage him under the condition of changing his name to Rock Hudson. The name was coined by combining the Rock of Gibraltar and the Hudson River. In 1948, Hudson made his acting debut with a small part in the Warner Brothers film Fighter Squadron, but his acting skills were still a work in progress. It reportedly took him 38 takes to deliver his only line in the film. Hudson was signed to a long-term contract by Universal International. There, he received coaching in acting, singing, dancing, fencing, and horseback riding, and began to be featured in film magazines where, being photogenic, he was promoted. In the early 1950s, he achieved leading man status, starring in adventure films and romances, but the film that truly launched him to stardom was the 1954 romantic drama Magnificent Obsession. The film grossed over $5 million at the box office and was well received by critics, earning Hudson the title of Most Popular Actor of the Year from Modern Screen magazine. 2 years later, Hudson's career reached new heights with an Academy Award nomination for his role in George Stevens' Giant, co-starring Elizabeth Taylor and James Dean. According to some colleagues, Hudson's homosexuality was widely known in Hollywood. Former co-stars like Julie Andrews, Mia Farrow, and Elizabeth Taylor, and friends like Audrey Hepburn and Carol Burnett protected his secret. He married Phyllis Gates to squash the rumors, but she filed for divorce 3 years later, citing mental cruelty. Hudson did not contest, and Gates received $250 a week in alimony for 10 years. By 1957, Hudson was the most popular actor in American cinema, consistently ranking among the top 10 stars for nearly a decade. What could possibly go wrong? A lot, apparently. Despite his success, Hudson encountered setbacks in the 1960s with films like Strange Bedfellows and A Very Special Favor flopping at the box office. As he entered the 1980s, years of heavy smoking and drinking began taking a toll on Hudson's health. He suffered a devastating heart attack in 1981, requiring emergency quintuple bypass surgery, and his new TV show, The Devlin Connection, was canceled due to his prolonged recovery. He refused to quit smoking, and it only worsened the situation. Soon, poor old Hudson was infamous for outbursts with cast and crew members. Worse, his memory and speech began to rapidly deteriorate during the dynasty. He was slated to appear for the duration of the second half of its 5th season, but because of his health challenges, his character was abruptly written out of the show and died off-screen. The worst was yet to come. In 1984, Hudson was privately diagnosed with AIDS, 3 years after the first cases appeared in the U.S., and a year after scientists linked HIV to AIDS. He kept his condition hidden and continued working while traveling to France and other countries, hoping to find a cure or a treatment to slow the disease's progression. It didn't work. Hudson deteriorated to the point where he needed a stretcher to be carried from the Air France Boeing 747 he had chartered, with only his medical team aboard. He died on October 2, 1985, from AIDS-related complications. He was 59 and passed away in his sleep at his Beverly Hills home. There was no funeral following his wishes, and his body was cremated. A few days later, Congress set aside $221 million to develop a cure for AIDS. His contributions to the film industry didn't go unnoticed, though. He received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Elizabeth Taylor posthumously honored him with a bronze plaque on the West Hollywood Memorial Park, and yeah, he was also commemorated with a Golden Palm star on the Palm Springs Walk of Stars in 2002.
Perhaps it is because I am weak from my wound, but I wish, if only for a few minutes, to be a woman.
Number 4. Amanda Blake. From Hollywood hopeful to Gunsmoke legend, Amanda Blake has one of the more intriguing coming-of-age stories. She was a glowing actress and animal activist. She also lived a colorful life and never let anyone undermine her. She was also a cancer survivor, most remembered for her role as the sassy saloon proprietor Miss Kitty Russell on Gunsmoke. Before she became Amanda Blake, the Little Dreamer was the only child of Jesse and Louise Neal, and her English and Scottish pedigree included Revolutionary War heroine Kate Barry, who alerted local patriots of approaching British forces. Her warning played a crucial role in securing the Battle of Cowpens, which birthed the decisive American triumph at Yorktown. After graduating from a high school in California, Beverly went on to Pomona College, and it was there she found her passion for acting. Legends say she loved participating in community theater productions more than doing her homework. Supported by her parents, Beverly kept a busy acting schedule, performing in summer stock productions in New England, as well as in theater and radio in Buffalo. She worked as a telephone operator to make money while chasing her dreams, but you know what they say, fortune favors the bold. Eventually, Beverly made her way to Hollywood. When MGM discovered her, they saw immense potential and even dubbed her the next Greer Garson, a major Hollywood star of the 1940s. She decided to officially change her name from Beverly Neal to Amanda Blake, aiming for something catchier. Amanda debuted in Stars in My Crown and appeared in more than a dozen films and TV shows throughout the early 1950s. Her major breakthrough, however, came in 1955 when she was cast as Miss Kitty Russell, the owner of the Long Branch Saloon in Dodge City, starring alongside a relatively unknown James Arness, who took on the role of Marshal Matt Dillon. For the next 19 years, Blake enjoyed a fulfilling experience as part of Gunsmoke, which became one of television's most cherished westerns. She described the cast and crew as family, and that the job felt like a home to her. She even visited the set when she wasn't scheduled to work. Curious about why she left? Well, the truth was that her commute from Arizona to California was too much. She was tired and had declining health issues that made her choice the only option. Blake enjoyed acting as Miss Kitty for 19 years, but in her words, 19 years is a long time for someone to be stuck behind a bar. Between 1955 and 1974, Blake appeared in few films, but made numerous guest appearances on shows like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Red Skelton Show, The Dean Martin Comedy Roasts, Tattletales, Match Game, and The Love Boat. She married her second husband, Jason Seymour Day, in 1964, divorced him a year later, and then married Frank Gilbert until 1982. Between that, she joined with like-minded people to form the Arizona Animal Welfare League, the oldest and largest no-kill animal shelter in the state. 6 years later, in 1977, she survived oral cancer and founded the American Cancer Society. She was honored with the Society's annual Courage Award presented by U.S. President Ronald Reagan. Despite declining health, no thanks to her smoking habits, Amanda Blake remained active. She divorced Frank Gilbert in 1982 and married her fourth husband, Mark Spaeth, in 1984. She also appeared in movies and TV shows like Edge of Night, Brothers, and The New Dragnet. In 1985, she thrilled Gunsmoke fans by returning as Miss Kitty in the TV reunion movie Gunsmoke: Return to Dodge, starring alongside James Arness. Sadly, Amanda Blake passed away on August 16, 1989, at the age of 60. Initially, her death was attributed to throat cancer, but later, her death certificate revealed a partial cause of death was CMV hepatitis, an AIDS-related condition. How she contracted HIV remains a mystery, but her close friends denied that she was a drug user or sexually promiscuous. If they were right, a plausible outcome was that she may have contracted AIDS from her fifth husband, who also died from AIDS-related pneumonia in 1985. But what do you think? Could Mark Spaeth really have been the common denominator? Number 3. Paul Shenar. Is it possible to be a Hollywood buff without being a fan of Paul Shenar? We don't think so. Known for his charismatic and commanding presence both on and off screen, Paul Shenar became a seasoned stage and screen actor during the golden age of Hollywood. He played both heroic and villainous roles equally and drooled at the edge of their seats. Born on February 12, 1936 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, he was the second of 4 sons in a Polish-Slovenian family, and from an early age, Shenar was drawn to theater. He made his way to New York, where he became a founding member, actor, director, and teacher of the American Conservatory Theater, ACT, in San Francisco. He performed in over 40 productions there, including Hamlet, Oedipus Rex, and Brother Gillian in Tiny Alice. However, his television career began to flourish in the late 1970s with roles in The Night That Panicked America as Orson Welles, and as Broadway producer Florence Ziegfeld in Ziegfeld, The Man and His Women. With rising fame, Shenar was due for a breakout role, and it finally came in 1983's Scarface as the chilling Bolivian drug lord Alejandro Sosa, one of cinema's most memorable villains. The intelligence and ruthlessness he portrayed in the film struck multiple chords with audiences and created a benchmark. In addition to Scarface, Shenar received high praise for voicing the evil rat Jenner in the animated feature The Secret of Nim. Producer Don Bluth, for one, was so impressed by Shenar's performance that he wanted to cast him as the voice of the villain Borf in the game Space Ace. However, budget constraints prevented this, and Bluth ended up voicing the role himself. In any case, Shenar was no stranger to success. He was loved for his multifaceted approach to acting and struck gold with thrillers like The Bedroom Window and Bestseller, as well as the French underwater epic The Big Blue. It's a shame his personal life was so turbulent. He was openly gay during a time when Hollywood wasn't as accepting, and he had a long-term relationship with British actor Jeremy Brett, best known for portraying Sherlock Holmes on television. They were said to have dated for 5 years and stayed close friends even after they split. Tragically, Shenar was diagnosed with AIDS in the early 1980s, and he passed away on October 11, 1989, at the age of 53. His death was a great loss to both theater and film communities, as he left behind a legacy of powerful performances and a pioneering spirit that inspired other actors. Before we go into the final duo on our list, make sure to hit the subscribe button to stay updated on our latest videos. We're bringing you more stories on Hollywood's unforgettable characters, legendary actors, and untold tales. Believe it when we say you don't want to miss it.
The plane is. Oh, it's a big, pretty white plane with red stripes and curtains in the window and wheels, and it looks like a big tile.
Number 2. Steven Stucker. You may love him or hate him, but there's no denying that Steven Stucker was an incredibly lively and free-spirited actor, known for his delightfully over-the-top performances as unforgettable, outrageous characters in a few classic comedies from the 1970s and 1980s. You might recall him as the wildly energetic control room worker Johnny in the early 1980s airplane movies, or as the stenographer in the courtroom scene of 1977's The Kentucky Fried Movie. But did you know he was also one of the first actors to publicly announce that he was HIV positive back in the 80s? Born in Des Moines, Iowa, Steven Stucker spent his school days as a seasoned pianist and class clown with a dry wit. He made his film debut in the 1975 comedic movie Carnal Madness, playing Bruce Wilson, a gay fashion designer who breaks out of a mental hospital with two other inmates fleeing to an all-girls school. He was likewise side-splitting as a cross-dressing court stenographer in the Kentucky Fried Movie. Later, he went on to perform in the 1977 earthquake comedy Cracking Up, alongside Fred Willard, Michael McKean, and Harry Shearer. But his greatest performance came with his wildly eccentric and memorable role as the quirky airport control room worker Johnny in the disaster parody Airplane. And guess what? For the first film, the writers only gave Stucker straightforward lines, leaving him to write his character's off-the-wall responses on his own. For someone so funny, electric, and off the bat, it's a shame that Stucker never made it to the top of the industry. He had everything he needed to be an A-list actor, yet he only made a few appearances throughout the 80s. In 1982, he appeared as a guest in a 3-episode arc on the TV series Mork and Mindy, and in the following year, he made a minor role in John Landis's Trading Places. In 1984, he co-starred as the flirtatious psychiatrist Dr. Bender in the teen comedy Bad Manners, commonly known as Growing Pains. Sadly, it was a fitting name for his personal life. Steven Stucker was diagnosed with AIDS on July 12, 1984, and openly revealed his illness the next year, making him one of the first known entertainers to do so. In a November 1985 interview, he mentioned experiencing cancer-like symptoms as early as 1979 and admitted to having been an intravenous drug user. He passed away from complications related to AIDS on April 13, 1986, in a Los Angeles hospital at the age of 38. He was laid to rest at the Chapel of the Chimes. His scenes in the 1988 film The Wizard of Speed and Time were filmed in 1984, the year of his dreadful diagnosis. Number 1. Wade Dominguez. Wade Dominguez may not be as popular as most of the names on our list, but boy was he a true talent. From modeling to singing to dancing and acting, Dominguez was one of the few faces in the industry who truly could do it all. With a mixed heritage of Mexican and French descent, he grew up in a large, close-knit family. After graduating from Live Oak High School in Morgan Hill in 1985, he followed his passion for dance by working as a go-go dancer in nightclubs. Soon he switched to modeling and acting, which inspired him to pursue opportunities in the entertainment industry. After moving to Los Angeles to kickstart his newfound dream, Dominguez enrolled in classes taught by Oscar nominee Jeannie Berlin. Berlin's mother, Elaine May, was said to be so impressed with Dominguez's work in class that she began recommending him for roles. While modeling in Italy, he secured a major acting part in an American soap opera. His first major film appearance came in 1994 with Erotique, a sensual drama directed by Lizzie Borden. A year later, Dominguez landed his breakout role in the box office hit Dangerous Minds, where he portrayed Emilio Ramirez, a troubled teen entangled in drugs, violence, and gang life. Starring alongside Michelle Pfeiffer, who played his teacher, Lou Ann Johnson, Dominguez brought depth and raw emotion to his role. The film was based on the true story of Johnson's experience as a former Marine who taught at an inner-city school. His performance was praised by critics and audiences alike for its emotional depth and authenticity. Following the success of Dangerous Minds, Dominguez continued to work in film and television. He portrayed a thief in 1997's City of Industry alongside Harvey Keitel, played a supporting role as the friend and manager of a hip-hop artist in the legal thriller Shadow of Doubt, and starred as a rookie cop in the comedy drama The Taxman a year later. Remember R.E.M's hit song Losing My Religion? Dominguez actually appeared in the music video. He also recorded his own music, including Give It Up, which was featured on the Dangerous Minds soundtrack. On August 26, 1998, Dominguez tragically passed away from respiratory failure due to AIDS at Midway Hospital in Los Angeles. Though earlier diagnosed with the disease, he chose to keep it private, wishing to be remembered for his talent and accomplishments rather than his health condition or sexual orientation. Thankfully, Dominguez never went through the battle alone. He was heavily supported by his friends and co-stars, especially Elizabeth Berkley, who co-starred with him in The Taxman. She visited him in the hospital and showed him a rough cut of the film, which was dedicated to him. Deeply moved by his own performance, he broke down saying, "I'm so good. I'm so good." The movie was released posthumously and was dedicated to him. Gone but not forgotten, Dominguez left behind a legacy of inspiring and memorable performances that touched the hearts of many viewers. Loved by all, his versatility and charisma were one in a million, and he was such a lovable guy off-screen. He donated some of his earnings to charities that helped children in need. As we close the curtain on the stories of these 10 iconic actors who tragically lost their lives to AIDS, it's impossible not to reflect on the stigma that surrounded the disease in their time. Old Hollywood was beautiful, but it stood in an era when AIDS was still largely misunderstood. Victims not only suffered physically, but also had to survive the harsh judgment of the industry and society by extension. As we've already learned, many of these actors suffered in silence in fear that their careers would be ruined and their reputations tarnished beyond repair. Thankfully, times have changed. With increased education, advocacy, and medical advancements, people living with HIV and AIDS now have a much greater chance at leading healthy, fulfilling lives. Modern antiretroviral drugs can control the virus, and mothers don't have to pass the virus to their children. Hollywood, too, has become more inclusive and understanding as society has moved away from the fear-driven narratives of the past. Today, living with HIV is not a death sentence, and the stigma that once overshadowed the lives of these actors has gradually diminished. As we continue to raise awareness and fight for equality, we honor the legacies of these actors who were taken too soon. Their battles were not for naught, and posterity will remember them kindly. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out the video currently displaying on your screen. It's one you can't afford to miss.